Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive. Please subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description. So, imagine physically overpowering the world champions on the biggest stage in Paris.
Oh, what a feeling that must be, right?
Right, but then just weeks later, you have to sit on your couch and watch them lift the Webb Ellis Cup.
Yeah, that is just brutal.
It really is. That psychological agony is exactly what Ireland is living with right now. And honestly, it's the engine behind what's become the most gripping, gritty rivalry in modern rugby.
Without a doubt.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we are diving into a really fascinating piece from Planet Rugby today. It details some candid comments made by Ireland center Stuart McCloskey on the For the Love of Rugby podcast.
Yeah, he had some really interesting things to say.
He did, and our mission today is to figure out how this non-traditional clash morphed into such a fierce, authentic battle. I mean, usually when we look at elite rivalries in international rugby, we rely on geography, right?
Right, shared borders, centuries of proximity, you know.
Exactly. Historical narratives passed down through generations. But Ireland and South Africa, they don't fit that old school mold at all.
No, they really don't. The shift is entirely structural now. We're conditioned to think rivalries need those shared borders, but the architecture of the sport has fundamentally changed.
Yeah, how so?
Well, the traditional model of international rugby relied on teams playing each other maybe once a year during an autumn series.
Right.
Or sometimes going years without a fixture unless they collided in a World Cup knockout stage.
Right.
The emotional stakes were built on scarcity.
But now it's built on frequency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that has completely rewritten the emotional landscape of these encounters.
Yeah, because when Ben Youngs asked McCloskey point blank if the Springboks are now Ireland's main rivals superseding traditional foes, McCloskey pointed straight to the URC as the catalyst.
The United Rugby Championship.
Right. The structural integration of the South African franchises into that league has basically manufactured the proximity that geography lacked.
What's fascinating here is how structural integration at the club level cascades directly up to the absolute pinnacle of international competition.
Yeah, it changes everything.
Because the South African franchises are fully in the URC, that weekly proximity just changes the entire complexion of the international tests. It strips away all that polite distance.
Yeah, you're not figuring them out on the fly anymore.
Exactly. An Irish player is executing a game plan against someone whose tendencies they know intimately from like 3 previous club fixtures that season.
I always think about it like moving in with a casual acquaintance. You know, you used to see them once a year at a conference. No friction, just polite nods.
Yeah, keeping it professional.
Right. But then circumstances change, and
Yep.
you end up in the same apartment building. You share the elevator every morning. You fight for the same parking spots.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
That proximity does one of two things, right? It either makes you best friends, or it creates this intense, highly competitive friction where every little interaction is a battle.
And in elite sports, it almost always leans toward friction. McCloskey explicitly said this breeds a lot more beef and grittiness.
A lot of beef.
Yeah, you have to account for the physical toll and the emotional memory. When an Irish forward pack hits the exact same South African bodies in rucks in November, then March, and then in the playoffs,
That sounds exhausting.
it is. Those localized stakes compound. Historically, Northern Hemisphere teams might have been caught off guard by the sheer physicality of a Southern Hemisphere giant.
Right. The blunt force impact.
But now, an Irish player has already absorbed dozens of tackles from the core of the Springbok pack before the international window even opens.
Wow. But I do have to challenge the extent of that friction based on the quotes from the source, because McCloskey flat out claimed the South Africans just hate the Irish.
Yeah, those were strong words.
And Simon Zebo echoed it even more forcefully. He said, Rassie Erasmus hates the Irish. He really, really doesn't like us. Is this just the competitive environment, or is there genuine malice here? Calling it hate feels like a huge escalation.
Well, I would argue that hate, in this specific context, operates as a synonym for ultimate grudging respect.
You think so?
Yeah, combined with a desperate desire to establish dominance. It's an authentic tension born from real bruises and scoreboard pressure. It is manufactured by marketing departments.
It's just a byproduct of two elite systems colliding constantly.
Exactly.
But is it purely about competitive respect? Because when Zebo says Rassie really doesn't like us, that sounds highly personal, especially given Rassie's history of off-pitch mind games, the referee videos, you know.
Yeah, he definitely has a deliberate media strategy.
Right. It feels like there's a psychological warfare element engineered from the top down. It goes beyond just wanting to win a rugby match.
You make a really compelling point regarding the psychological warfare. Erasmus certainly knows how to weaponize a narrative to galvanize his squad. Creating a siege mentality or painting an opponent as the ultimate antagonist is a tactic he uses to great effect. But whether that stems from personal animosity or a strategic calculation, the resulting beef is a massive net positive for the sport.
Oh, for sure. As a viewer, it's incredible.
Right, because the tension feels palpable to you, the viewer. The players are genuinely invested in settling scores that started months prior.
But, sharing a club league and throwing around words like hate only creates annoyance. For true animosity to capture the fans, you need a seesawing power struggle on the pitch.
If one team wins all the time, it's just a routine beating.
Exactly. And before we get into the actual timeline of that power struggle, I want to remind you to please subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description.
Good call.
So looking at the actual timeline, the balance of power shifted in dramatic ways. Between 2017 and 2024, Ireland went on this phenomenal unbeaten run against South Africa. They won all 3 of their duels.
Which is huge. Maintaining dominance over a powerhouse like South Africa for a 7-year stretch is a monumental psychological achievement.
It really is.
It completely rewrites that old inferiority complex that Northern Hemisphere teams historically carried against the Sanzar Giants. Ireland proved they had the tactical blueprint to dismantle the Springbok game plan consistently.
And the crown jewel of that streak was undoubtedly the 2023 pool match in Paris. That 13-8 victory was just an absolute war of attrition.
An incredible match.
Let's dig into the how and why behind that specific scoreline. Why did Ireland manage to suffocate them on that stage?
Well, it was a masterclass in tactical contrast. You had Farrell's hyper-efficient, multi-phase attacking structure, meeting the sheer disruptive chaos of the Springbok defensive blitz.
Right, the rush defense.
Exactly. Ireland managed to retain possession through an absurd number of phases, denying South Africa the broken field transition ball they thrive on.
Because Ireland's shape-shifting attack relies on lightning-quick ruck speed.
Yeah, and South Africa countered that not just with bulk, but with a highly sophisticated, suffocating umbrella defense that forces play back inside.
Which is so hard to play against.
It really is. Ireland's ability to maintain discipline and execute under that specific type of suffocation was the difference.
But the paradox that follows is agonizing. I mean, Ireland wins that brutal war of attrition. They execute flawlessly, yet South Africa adjusts and navigates the rest of the tournament and wins back-to-back World Cups.
It's crazy to think about.
Put yourself in the Irish locker room.
Yeah.
You physically overpower the Springboks, you out-tactic them, and then weeks later you have to watch them lift the Webb Ellis Cup while you're eliminated in the quarters again.
Oh, that cognitive dissonance has to breed a very specific, dark type of sporting frustration.
Absolutely.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you're looking at the classic unstoppable force meets immovable object dynamic. This paradox is the exact engine driving the rivalry today.
Right, because they both have claims to being the best.
Exactly. Both teams have completely valid yet conflicting claims to supreme status. South Africa holds the hardware.
The World Cup titles.
Yeah, to prove they're the best when the pressure is highest. But Ireland holds the head-to-head receipts.
They can look them in the eye and say, we beat you in the trenches.
Exactly. Because both nations feel a legitimate sense of superiority, every single match becomes a battle to settle an argument that inherently cannot be settled.
And we saw that argument play out in the summer of 2024.
Sure.
South Africa finally broke their 8-year drought in July with a 27-20 win at Loftus Versfeld.
They adjusted their rush defense and disrupted the Irish ruck speed.
But Ireland didn't fold. 1 week later, they bounced back to win 25-24 and level the series, a 1-point margin.
Razor thin.
Then the story escalates again. Jump to November 2025. Erasmus's squad goes into Dublin, historically a fortress for Farrell's men, and takes them down 24-13.
The tactical adjustments in that November test were fascinating. South Africa didn't just rely on their traditional maul and set-piece dominance.
Right, they evolved.
They evolved their kicking game to pin Ireland in uncomfortable areas of the pitch. It completely neutralized the structured exits Ireland usually relies on.
Defeating Ireland in Dublin was a clear message.
Yeah, that the Springboks are not just tournament specialists, but that they can dismantle elite opposition in their own backyard.
It proves the margins are still just razor thin. Every single phase feels like a chess match played with sledgehammers.
I love that description.
But a rivalry of this magnitude cannot just exist between 30 guys on a pitch. It inevitably bleeds into the stands. And here's where it gets really interesting.
The fans.
Yes. We move from the intense, bruising, tactical warfare to the hilarious, calculated, off-field fan culture that defines this matchup.
Fan culture operates as the ultimate barometer of a rivalry's health. When supporters are this deeply invested, they construct a secondary narrative.
Right, parallel to the rugby itself.
Exactly. The dynamic between the Irish and South African supporters has developed its own unique, highly entertaining flavor that elevates the whole broadcast product.
Oh, let's talk about the psychological warfare happening in the stadiums. During the 2023 World Cup, Irish fans organically adopted the Cranberry Zombie as their anthem.
That was such a moment.
You had tens of thousands of people belting it out in France, an incredible unifying cultural moment. But the South African fans recognized the emotional weight of that song, and in a move of pure, calculated cheekiness, they hijacked it.
They really did.
They changed the lyrics to sing "Rassie, Rassie, Rassie" in honor of their head coach.
It is a masterclass in trolling, taking something your opponent's supporters claimed as an emotional touchstone and repurposing it to glorify the man plotting their downfall.
It's wild.
It subtly undermines the psychological comfort the original song provided. Just a brilliant piece of fan-driven psychological warfare.
McCloskey was actually asked about this directly by Ben Youngs, and Ben joked, "You don't nick the song."
How did McCloskey react?
He was definitely exasperated. He quipped that, "It's not good, Crick," and told the South African fans, "Come on, lads, think of your own crack." He basically called them out for stealing material instead of creating their own atmosphere.
Yet, importantly, McCloskey also demonstrated that he respects top-tier banter when he sees it, even when he's the target.
Yeah, that's true.
He understands the theater of the sport requires a villain and a hero, and those roles swap depending on which hemisphere you're sitting in.
He actually shared a fantastic anecdote to prove that. During a summer test in South Africa 2 years ago, Jack Crowley missed a kick in the 5th minute.
Oh, I remember this.
The stadium communications operator immediately played comical, exaggerated way noises over the loudspeakers. They literally had sound effects queued up for Irish mistakes.
That is hilarious.
McCloskey admitted that despite himself, it was very good crack. But I have a question about this environment. Is this level of fan and stadium involvement, stealing anthems, playing sound effects, crossing a line into disrespect? Or is it the ultimate sporting compliment?
That's a great debate.
Right, because they recognize the threat you pose. I really want to know what you, the listener, think about this specific dynamic. Please drop your thoughts and opinions in the comments regarding the stolen zombie anthem. Is it brilliant banter or stepping over the line?
I wouldn't classify it as disrespectful, personally. McCloskey himself described the relations as cordial. You have to remember, underneath the brutal collisions, this is ultimately an entertainment product.
Yeah, that's fair.
When a stadium actively leans into the pantomime villainy of the situation, it makes the sport richer, more vibrant, and infinitely more engaging.
It ensures the atmosphere is at a boiling point before the referee even blows the whistle.
Exactly. The structural integration of the URC set the stage, the elite coaching provided the drama, and the fans are actively delivering the soundtrack.
It is the perfect storm for a modern sports rivalry. You have the manufactured proximity of the club structures, the tactical genius on both staffs, the agonizingly close score lines, and the conflicting claims to supremacy.
The World Cup trophies versus the head-to-head records.
Right. Plus, a fan base entirely willing to lean into the theater. It really brings up a fascinating concept to ponder as we wrap up. We've seen how the integration of South African franchises into the URC artificially created this proximity.
Yeah, it successfully ignited a top-tier global rivalry in just a few short years.
Could further cross-hemisphere club integrations completely rewrite the traditional map of global rugby rivalries over the next decade? Are we looking at a future where history and borders matter far less than the frequency of top-flight club-level competition?
It is certainly a massive shift in the business of the sport to keep an eye on.
It definitely is. Well, please remember to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description. Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive, and we'll look forward to you listening to our next episode.